Former FBI Director James Comey, long a rhetorical target of President Trump, may now be a legal one. The indictment that may come and the layers of DOJ drama behind it. U.S. economic growth looks resilient. Some might even argue robust. Inflation still sticky. Job market soft. Top White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett joins us to talk about it all. And Dr. Mehmet Oz here on set. Tylenol, autism, Medicare fraud, Medicaid work requirements, and the future of healthcare and AI. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. A James Comey indictment, a government shutdown with mass layoffs, TikTok's future with an American algorithm, the latest on the fatal shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas, and the nasty blame game that has ensued, Tylenol, autism, and fears about cause and effect confusion. It is a damn busy Thursday. All these topics and more will animate tonight's show. Just moments ago in the Oval Office, President Trump signed an executive order, I alluded to that at the top of the show, that allows TikTok to continue operating in the United States. The order clears the way for TikTok to sell its U.S. assets to mainly American investors. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady, always ready to jump in when I need someone to jump in to rescue me when Kevin Hassett wanders off the No, he's still on the campus of the White House. He's just not in our North Lawn position. But Kelly, you're with us in New York. Help us understand what happened.
Yes, well, I will try and fill the shoes of Kevin Hassett, but always happy to help out the Takeout. You know, Major, you're my favorite. So listen, this essentially clears the way for a deal to get done. The executive order says that the deal, the framework of a deal, right, because all the nitty-gritty has not been nailed down, satisfies the concerns that Congress had and was essentially the reason why this was banned, right? It was owned by a Chinese company, or is owned by a Chinese company, ByteDance, and there was the concern about national security and user data being transferred back to China. So what we know about this is that Oracle is going to be the security provider. Remember that Larry Ellison, who owns Oracle, is the father of David Ellison, who is the owner, chairman and CEO of Paramount Skydance, which of course is the parent company of CBS News. But they are going to retrain the algorithm that is going to be, there's going to be a copy that's made, transferred over into a new American joint venture, and that's going to house the U.S. TikTok operations. That's really important, just the U.S. operations. I think there's going to be a lot of questions about what retrain means, because of course, remember, the banning of this, it had bipartisan support. So I would expect a lot of members of Congress to have a lot of pushback there. But generally, this extends that ban deadline by about 120 days to get this deal done. But the thing that I had been looking for, Major, and I finally got some clarity on it, Vice President J.D. Vance mentioned that the valuation of TikTok, it would be $14 billion. For someone that worked in mergers and acquisitions, that is a pretty high number for a company that is not profitable. Of course, it is a really engaging platform, but I was finally glad to see some clarity around that valuation.
And you provided so much of that clarity, as you always do, Kelly. Quickly on the upwardly revised GDP numbers.
Yes, so this is the third estimate for second quarter GDP, came in at 3.8%. We were expecting 3.3%. Pretty big jump. Why? Consumer spending was revised up. Now, generally, that's a good thing. But Major, you and I have talked about a two-speed economy that has been going on. So really, the higher income folks, they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to spending. And we are still seeing that lower income consumer struggle to make ends meet. So overall, good number at the top of the economy. But you got to peel back the onion for the real story.
Clear and brilliant as always. Kelly O'Grady in New York. Thank you so very, very much. Still to come. One of President Trump's top health advisors, Dr. Mehmet Oz, is live right here on the Takeout to, he hopes, clear up the confusion on the president's announcement about Tylenol and autism. Plus, the Epstein files may soon be released. There's now enough votes in Congress to do so. The lawmaker leading the charge says there's now what he calls panic on Capitol Hill. And authorities are revealing who was being targeted at the deadly shooting at a Texas ICE facility, as the latest act of violence fuels a political blame game. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout, where we are making show adjustments on the fly, minute by minute, folks, so just hold on tight. The New Jersey gubernatorial race is currently a toss-up. That, according to a new poll from Emerson College, reputable polling outfit, it found that 43% of voters each support Republican nominee Jack Ciattarelli and Democratic nominee Mikey Sherrill. Joining me now, Sabrina Rodriguez. She's a national politics reporter for The Washington Post, and Max Cohen, congressional reporter for Punchbowl News. Great to have you both here. This poll kind of surprised me because it does not track with previous polls that had Mikey Sherrill up anywhere 7, 8, 9 points. Now it looks like a dead heat. If that's actually reflective of where this race is heading, that will be a bad night for Democrats, Sabrina.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one that we've been talking about, looking at 1 year out from the presidential election. This is supposed to be the Virginia and New Jersey gubernatorial races, both supposed to be very favorable for Democrats, just based off of historical trends. Also, just looking at the candidate profiles, Congresswoman Sherrill's considered a very formidable candidate. So for Democrats, this is definitely a moment of a wake-up call to say, wait a minute, what is going on in this race that would put this at a dead heat? Of course, we always have polls that can be a little bit of outliers, but certainly this close to the election, it's a cause for concern for Democrats.
Max, I want to play you some sound from today from Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader. He talks about someone, Russ Vought, who's the head of Office of Management and Budget. He calls it OMB, and he's pretty ticked off. So let's listen.
We will not be intimidated by Russ Vought, who's completely and totally out of control. The OMB has been illegally shutting down parts of the government throughout the entire year. And the notion that Democrats are going to be intimidated by this guy, when all he's done is send a message to voters in Virginia and across the country that Republicans are determined to hurt the American people.
Max, that reference to Virginia also meant to galvanize Democrats and other independents, possibly in the upcoming Virginia gubernatorial race. But where do things stand? Democrats say they're not intimidated, but they folded the last time we went around this track.
That's right, but I think this time is going to be very different.
It feels
at
different.
Least if you listen to what Democratic
based
leaders.
on your reporting.
Exactly. I was actually at that press conference with Leader Jeffries, and he repeated multiple times that the Democratic position is to stop these healthcare cuts from going into effect, and that it's up to Republicans to meet with them. And I think what we saw in March was Chuck Schumer and some of his close allies in the Senate Democratic caucus fold, as you mentioned, and vote with Republicans. And there was this massive backlash and uprising from the Democratic base saying, don't do this. We need you to fight. Fast forward to this month, the leaders are very aware of how angry the voters are, and I think Democrats are not going to give in this time.
And Max, very quickly, on the health care front, there are two issues. One, Obamacare subsidies that are due to expire at the end of this calendar year, and then changes made to Medicaid in the big tax bill. Have Democrats prioritized, or they discuss the two of equal weight to them?
I think if we're being realistic, the Obamacare subsidies is something that can be worked into a potential funding deal, but Republicans are realistically not going to vote to repeal their signature healthcare policy, which just passed this summer. So that's, I see, a political talking point in the Medicaid, but the Obamacare subsidies, leaders in both parties and members of both parties realize Americans are not going to want these healthcare prices to go up, and they're trying to solve that.
We'll play for you, Sabrina, sound from last night. Kamala Harris was in New York talking about her book, 107 Days, and there were some intermittent protests. Let's listen.
I respect your right to speak, but you're not letting me speak. What's happening right now in Gaza, what is happening to the Palestinian people is outrageous, and it breaks my heart.
Take it away.
I was there.
You were there? Okay, you were there.
I was there, so I got to witness. The event was about an hour. The first night, the first, stop on her book tour as she's trying to promote this book. There's already been a lot of headlines because of comments she's made about former President Biden and his decision to run, comments that she's made about Pete Buttigieg, about Gavin Newsom, about other prominent Democrats that have kind of brought fireworks. But in this first event, really what we saw was some of the repetition we saw from the campaign trail, where we saw a lot last year of pro-Palestinian protesters disrupting campaign rallies. What was unique this time, after having been on the trail with her last year, was her engaging with them. We saw, last year it was oftentimes they'd get removed and people would cheer over them and would kind of keep it moving. This time she was interrupted multiple times, and she'd be talking about how she missed being home with her family while she was on the campaign trail, and have to pivot to talking about Gaza. And I think what we heard from her was trying to distance herself from Biden, try and create this distance that, oh, she had a very different position. I think it's an open question for folks if that's convincing, as she was his vice president and co-signed some of those decisions. But it was interesting to just see how she navigated the multiple interruptions throughout the event.
Max, I want to play for you sound from Thomas Massie, Republican from Kentucky, lead Republican sponsor of the discharge petition on the Epstein files. Let's listen.
Well, the House leaders and some of the powers that be in D.C. are in full panic right now. Yesterday, with the election, the special election that gets us to 218, they came back and tried to get the four of us to take our names off of the petition.
They asked you that directly?
They asked some of my colleagues who are co-signers.
The three other
and they actually threatened them, and politically, not physically.
I guess we always have to attach that disclaimer now. Threats, political, not physical. What's the state of play?
This is likely going to get a vote on the House floor, with Adelita Grijalva was just elected on Tuesday.
She was on our show last night.
As Congressman Massey mentioned, that takes the number of signers expected to be 218, of course.
Unless the Republican leadership can peel one or two off.
Correct, and it does not appear that's likely, given these House Republicans have already put their name on it and taken the heat. I don't see much of a reason for them to take it off now. But timing-wise, Grijalva is not set to be sworn in until later next week, because, of course, the House of Representatives is still on recess, something that is angering Democrats who want a funding deal. So we might have to wait a little bit, but it is an expectation that this will get a vote in the House.
And Sabrina, very quickly, even if it passes the House, the Senate, the president, but it becomes a political symbol.
100%. I mean, this is not something that the president wants to be dealing with. We've seen him for months now try and push away this conversation, try and distract and focus on other things. And it has been Republicans on Capitol Hill. This is a rare moment of some of them openly breaking with the president, which is something we've seen them struggle to do since he came back to office.
Sabrina Rodriguez, Max Cohen, great to have you with us. And I will not let you go unless you grab some candy.
All right.
Dr. Oz makes a takeout house call. Isn't that clever? He'll join me to talk about President Trump's announcement linking autism rates and Tylenol and a lot more. That's ahead right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. That took a while. Here's a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. The Oklahoma school superintendent who made headlines when he tried to put Bibles in the state's classrooms has resigned. Ryan Walters has taken a job leading the conservative group Teacher Freedom Alliance, saying in the announcement, quote, "We're going to destroy the teachers' unions." Just days ago, Walters announced a partnership with Turning Point USA, vowing that every high school in Oklahoma would have chapters of the conservative group co-founded by conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Amazon has reached a $2.5 billion settlement with the Federal Trade Commission. Officials say Amazon deceived people to sign up for its Prime subscription program and made it hard to cancel. $1.5 billion will go to customers impacted by, quote, unwanted Prime enrollment or deferred cancellation. The remaining $1 billion will go toward a civil penalty to the FTC. It's one of the largest settlements and fines ever imposed. We are learning new details about the deadly shooting at an ICE facility in Dallas. Officials say Joshua Yon was specifically intending to kill ICE agents when he opened fire Wednesday. Here is what else they revealed.
We have been able to confirm that Yon legally obtained an 8mm bolt-action rifle he used in the shooting in August of this year. Based on our investigation to date, we believe Yon acted alone. But I'll stress our investigation continues.
Aaron Navarro joins me now from the North Lawn of the White House. Aaron, I want to play for you and our audience sound from the president earlier today about what might have led to this. Listen.
The radical left Democrats are causing this problem, and it gets worse. It gets worse. And it'll be a point where other people won't take it anymore, and that will not be good for the radical left.
Aaron, that creates kind of a rhetorical specter in space and creates this idea that one type of violence might be responded to by another type of violence.
Indeed, indeed. And in general, there's been a rush from this White House to put blame on Democrats, allege an ideological motive behind some of these attacks, both the shooting in Texas as well as the assassination of Charlie Kirk a couple weeks ago, before the full investigation is completed. And what the White House has been pointing to repeatedly this week in the case of Texas is a photo from FBI Director Kash Patel of bullet casings found on the scene where one reads, quote, anti-ICE. Vice President Vance has also suggested that there's some evidence that he knows that is not yet public that says that shows that this shooter in Texas is politically motivated. But beyond putting the blame on Democrats, what we're hearing this afternoon in the Oval Office is actual action. You saw the Attorney General Pam Bondi just this hour say that she will work, the Department of Justice will work with the Treasury Department to look at groups such as Antifa, which is not a centralized group, and funders to Democrats claiming that they're behind some of the riots we saw against police brutality in 2020 up until some of the violence that we're seeing now. And they're not providing a lot of evidence, but President Trump has called out two names, Democratic mega donor Reid Hoffman, as well as George Soros. So they're certainly amplifying the rhetoric, yes, but they're also using the power in the executive branch to potentially go after or further investigate their claims.
Democrats have heard these accusations and responded, at least in the form of House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries earlier today. Let's play that sound. Control room.
The climate of violence that exists right now in the United States of America is out of control, and we need leadership coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue to take the temperature down for everybody. With respect to the Department of Homeland Security, they should be ashamed of themselves. They put out what effectively is a hit list against Democratic public officials, put a target on the backs of Democratic public officials with outrageous and outlandish charges, and they're using taxpayer dollars to do it.
So the temperature continues to rise, Aaron.
Indeed, and you're seeing the House Minority Leader specifically criticize the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who in the post put blame on the latest shooting in Texas on, quote, anti-ICE rhetoric from, quote, radical activists. And then she put blame on what she calls sanctuary politicians or officials from areas that have made it a policy to not cooperate with federal immigration officers as enticing some of the violence that we're seeing in the last couple of weeks.
Aaron Navarro, North Lawn of the White House. Thank you very, very much. The Takeout will be back in just a few moments. Welcome back. I told you we were adjusting the show on the fly, and as if to illustrate that perfectly, I said he was not here. He's now here. The director of the National Economic Council for the White House, Kevin Hassett. Kevin, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here, Major. Yeah, we were scheduled to speak when the president was still speaking, and so we had to pause. But he finished, and I came right down from my office.
And I know the priority the president speaking carries for you and all my good friends who cover the White House. So, some economic data today, Kevin, I want you to get your appraisal of. GDP growth revised upward. Initial jobless claims came in under estimates. I'm gathering you regard both of those as positive statistical developments. Lurking within that data, the amount of time people in this country are unemployed lengthening by about almost a week, meaning people are being out of a job longer than they would prefer. That seems to me a possibly discouraging sign. Parse all three for my audience, if you'd be so kind.
What we're seeing is, so for example, we had incredible retail sales. So year over year, retail sales in America are up 6%, which means that Americans, especially ordinary Americans that are responsible for, sales at Walmart and places like that, are out there feeling healthy income-wise and buying stuff. The GDP release shows that. And meanwhile, because all the factories are coming along onshore again, then we're seeing a huge explosion in factory investment. Meanwhile, while we're doing that, there's a reduction in government jobs by about 250,000 because we're trying to make the government more efficient. And so there's a whole bunch of data that's very, very positive. The one thing that you pointed to is that if you look at some of the labor market data, that especially the payroll survey, it said there were only 20-something thousand jobs in August. And I believe that's a statistical anomaly. And one of the ways we know that is that the jobs numbers are revised when we get the claims data, which you just talked about. And the claims data have been very, very positive. And so I think in the end, the revisions for the jobs numbers are going to be very consistent with every other number that's so strong right now.
Kevin, is the TikTok deal done? Absolutely done, meaning ByteDance, the Chinese government, everyone who needs to sign off on this has signed off on it.
The President Xi and President Trump have agreed to a process to finalize the deal. It's a process that really has two tracks. One is a track where ByteDance is setting up investments with American companies and negotiating with those companies. And I think that there's still some moving parts on which companies that's going to be. And at the same time, the governments have to approve that the deal that they finalize is consistent with the two presidents' agreement. Yeah, everybody is almost certain that that's going to happen, but it's not completely done yet. And the only reason it's not done yet is that we're going to scrutinize the deal carefully to make sure that it's good for the American people and it protects their data security.
Why does the shutdown conversation, Kevin, need a threat from the White House that there will be massive federal layoffs if it's unresolved?
Right. Well, it's something that there's not a promise that there'll be massive layoffs. It's an option that OMB reminded Democrats is on the table every time they don't fund the government. So if money is not appropriated for a job, then OMB's responsibility is to cut that job. Historically, we've known that the shutdown is only going to last for a short time. And so therefore, people have basically put on a four-quarter offense and waited until the deal got worked out. But if the deal isn't worked out, if Democrats shut down this government, then we're going to explore our options. And Russ Vought asked the Treasury Secretary and other cabinet secretaries to explore what their options would be if they have the option to, RIF employees if they don't get the money they need to run their agencies. And whether they do that or not is an open question that will be, I think, assessed by each cabinet secretary. But what we really hope is that we get a deal that doesn't shut down the government, because the Democrats are posturing right now to try to come up with anything that'll change the story. Because, again, like we were just talking about how strong the economy is, how much momentum we have for the American people. And so one of the ways in politics that people try to upset momentum is they do things like shut down the government. And it's kind of a silly political ploy. Yep. And I think Russ is reminding Democrats that they should really think about the gravity of what they're talking about doing.
Kevin Hassett mentioned RIF. That is an acronym, Reduction in Force. I like to clarify acronyms whenever I'm knowledgeable.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry,
capable.
yeah.
Kevin Hassett.
After a long day in the White House, you tend to use acronyms. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Trump health official, Dr. Oz. I see him right here. Look at that.
I can
on
read
the
it
connection between Tylenol and autism and other things we're going to talk about. Much more than that. He's next right on the Takeout.
How are you?
Welcome back to the Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. Health experts, I know that's a loaded term in these contemporary political times, and some Republican lawmakers taking issue with the administration's new position that Tylenol used during pregnancy could contribute to autism. Here was the president on that matter Monday at the White House.
Taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary.
Administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, joins me now. Dr. Oz, great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Synthesize for my audience what the federal advice here is on this. Is it to never take Tylenol under any circumstance?
Categorically, no.
Okay.
The advice actually that the president gave in that little piece is pretty accurate. If you've got a high fever, if you've got big problems that are worrisome to you, and hopefully you'll contact your doctor if that's the case, they're going to tell you to take Tylenol for the fever because we don't have a lot of the other options, and the fever itself could be a problem. The concern here is that I believe most women get low-grade fevers, they stub their toe, they have little aches and pains, and they think it's perfectly safe to throw a couple paracetamol or acetaminophen or Tylenol when they're pregnant, and I don't think that's the case. And here's the real question, Major. If you're where we are right now, and the president charged us to find out what's going on with autism, why is it we have 5 times more autistic children than we had 25 years ago, which is clearly not genetic. There's something environmental happening.
From your opinion, it's clearly not genetic.
It couldn't shift 5-fold in 25 years. Genes don't do that.
Is any of that related to a more precise or expanded definition of what autism is, meaning the spectrum enlarged, and children who might not have fallen into that categorization, say 15 years ago, now fall into it?
I'll grant you there's a possible creep there, but let me ask you a question, because we're probably similar in age. How many children in your class or in your environment, your neighborhood, had autism when you were growing up?
I didn't know any.
I didn't know any either. Secretary Kennedy often recounts that he's never known anybody, his age group. And so where are all the 60, 70-year-old autistic people? There seems to have actually been a real change. And then the question is, what's going down? And when we were asked to look into this, we broke the silos down between the FDA, Marty McCary, who's been on the show many times, Jay Bhattacharya, NIH, myself at CMS, and we did the best we could to figure out, looking at the best science out there, what are the clues? And we figured 2 out. Now, there are going to be more. This is evolving.
And these are clues, not conclusions.
Signals. These are things that we believe that if you're fully transparent about, you'll rebuild trust with the American people. Just tell people what you know, like a doctor.
The two clues are?
That we believe that kids with autism spectrum disorder have a problem getting folate into their brain in some cases. That's a problem that could be treated with a medication that's a prescription drug that a doctor has to prescribe for you by definition called leucovorin. FDA is going to change the label on this drug over the next few weeks that will free up state Medicaid and CHIP services, which they insure most kids in America, to allow children and their moms to get access to this medication.
Because there's some small data sets that say this could be helpful. Leucovorin.
There are about 250 kids in different trials. But that's the key question is, if you, as a researcher on those trials, had a child, would you give that child leucovorin? And when I asked the doctors involved in those trials, they said yes. In fact, academic centers who are researching this, I got the same answer. So we don't have all the answers, but we feel obliged to tell the American people this. And who really was passionate about this is President Trump. He said, if we know this is a possible tool, why would we not tell the American people? Tylenol, same story. The Tylenol issue is whether or not we should warn moms who are pregnant today about a problem that we may not know fully the answer to. Is Tylenol a problem during pregnancy for another 5 years? Well, what about the kid today? Are you going to take the Tylenol or not? And I think the best prudent answer is, of course, take it if a doctor says you need it. But don't take it on your own without thinking twice about it.
Respond to this. This is something that came from the Coalition of Autism Scientists, saying, it alarms us researchers, meaning what the president said, who have committed our entire careers to better understanding autism. The data cited do not support the claim that Tylenol causes autism and leucovorin is a cure, and only stoke fear and falsely suggest hope when there is no simple answer.
They believe that we should keep secret these clues until we have all the definitive studies done. I'm an academic doctor. I was a professor at Columbia University, now emeritus. Jay was a professor at at Stanford. Marty, a professor at Hopkins. These are 3 top-tier institutions, all of us tenured faculty. I know what academic research is. But what are you going to do with the mom right now? In our moment of need, we cannot be surrounded by intellectuals. You have to have people who can make decisions, people of action. The president said, I will not wait one more day if we have a clue that the researchers themselves believe would change their actions. And so we're guarded in saying we don't have all the answers. But if it's my family, I'm not going to have my pregnant daughter take acetaminophen if she doesn't need to be on it without certainly talking to a doctor about it. And if I have a child that's autistic, I'm going to try this prescription drug, leucovorin. Try it for 3 months. If there's an improvement, keep going. If no improvement, stop it. These are the research tools that we have developed. We've written about it, and we've published it.
And you believe, Dr. Oz, this provides clarity, does not add to confusion?
If people want to be confused, it's easy to find a path to get there. I come on shows like yours because I think what I'm saying is understandable. There are political reasons why people don't want to understand it, and I want to highlight this reality. If you mix politics and medicine, you know what you get? Politics. You kill medicine. This is not to be a politicized issue. Let me ask you the big question, Major. Why would the president talk about this? There's no political benefit to him. He did it because he cares deeply about these children, and he doesn't want the American people hurt. And most importantly, he wants to be transparent about what we know, which is why he sent us out there, knowing that it's 5 years before we have the final answers that those researchers who are looking for the ultimate perfect result are expecting. But as a surgeon, you have to act in the moment. That's what we did.
Dr. Oz is going to stay with us for our next segment. I'm happy to say that, so please stay tuned to the Takeout. Welcome back. Rounding out the remainder of the show, continuing our conversation with Dr. Mehmet Oz. So very quickly, Dr. Oz, Tylenol does not cause autism.
Taking Tylenol chronically while you're pregnant could cause autism. Okay. I don't think we should mislead people on this issue at all. I don't believe, based on the research that I read, most recently a large study from the Harvard School of Public Health last week of August published, you would not want to take Tylenol unless you really needed to take it. What does that mean? It means in pregnancy, don't take stuff if you don't have to. And if you need to take stuff, talk to somebody about it, like a physician you trust, and then, of course, medicate yourself accordingly. But pregnancy is a very delicate time. And there are very few medications that you can really be comfortable taking. Even acetaminophen, the company itself says we're not advocating that you take it. But it's the only thing out there. So if you've got a high fever,
consult your doctor and read in on that. Okay. You're head of Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare fraud, two components: foreign actors and then large institutional healthcare providers in this country. United Healthcare is in the barrel on this civilly and criminally. What are you doing to deal with it? How big a problem is it?
It's a very large problem. Let's take the criminal actors first. There's large multinational syndicates that have been able to defraud the U.S. government. Why? We're a massive
We're talking
target.
about billions of dollars.
Oh, $15 billion was the last action we had with the DOJ recently. And just to explain what goes on, you need a Medicare beneficiary number, which everyone over 65 has, and you have a $1.7 trillion piggy bank, a piggy bank that's twice the size of the Defense Department. So all you need to do is that number to pierce the system. And if you're sophisticated, and these multinational criminal organizations are very sophisticated, they start to draw down money. They pretend they're sending out wheelchairs. They send drug bills that aren't legitimate. They pretend people are alive who aren't. They manufacture expenses. They collect all that money and get it offshore. And as soon as it leaves the country, you can't get it back. So the group that we busted, the $15 billion bust, the criminals are mostly back in Russia. There's a large syndicate that's doing hospice fraud. I'll give you one that's going to blow your mind. Durable medical equipment. That's the knee braces, some of these skin bandages. There's more DME suppliers in South Florida than McDonald's, I am told. I mean, are you kidding me? Now, these
DME, durable medical equipment.
Durable medical equipment. They're selling you braces and wheelchairs. So these folks start the companies, then they flee back to Cuba. So we never actually can catch them. We want to change the system. We want to do two things. One,
AI does that how?
Bingo. AI can tell us ahead of time based on patterns of spending. People who've never spent money suddenly spend a lot. You open a bank account. You don't have any inventory. You don't have any payroll. You're sending huge bills into Medicare. What gives? So we can identify fraud as fast as the fraudsters create these schemes and shut them down that rapidly. But we are aggressively pursuing these. Same thing, by the way, if you're looking at inappropriate billing or upcoding, all these little games that are played, we can now do exactly what the large companies have been doing in other walks of life. The same techniques banks use to catch fraud, we're starting to use. And we have a fraud war room that's just wonderful.
United Healthcare, Medicare Advantage. I know you're an advocate of Medicare Advantage. That someone takes advantage of Medicare Advantage doesn't mean Medicare Advantage doesn't work. Yeah. But United Healthcare is in the barrel.
They are, and they've come and spoken to just about everybody about the changes they're making to their company. But I'm interested in something much bigger than that. I want the ability of the Medicare beneficiary to choose the coverage they want. And I want whatever coverage they desire to be the right coverage for the American taxpayer, too. They should be affordable. They should be efficient. The most important thing we do at CMS and Medicare is provide high-quality care. And here's why, Major. The most expensive care of all is bad care. Because I pay someone to do a bad job, then I pay someone to fix that bad job, then I get paid for the complications. So we're interested in quality. And I want to go after every one of these groups, the traditional Medicare, the Medicare Advantage, even Medicaid. We should be providing better quality care. And part of what we did in the One Big Beautiful Bill was to make it easier for us to root out the fraud, waste, and abuse in the system and just focus on providing the most money at the point of care, get more primary care doctors taking care of patients. And the best example is the $50 billion that we're putting into the Rural Health Transformation Fund. That's twice as much money as currently spent by Medicaid in rural America. If you live in rural America and you're watching this show right now, your life expectancy is 3 years shorter than your fellow Americans watching in urban states. That's not right. Your zip code should not be your destiny. We're fixing that.
Medicaid. I'm well-versed in budget politics, Dr. Oz, to know that a reduction in a future increase is not a cut classically defined. But that doesn't mean someone might lose a benefit that they're currently enjoying, and it's cold comfort to them to be told it's not a cut. What is it? What happened in the Big Beautiful Bill to Medicaid? Because the political argument is it's a ravaging, damaging, gutting cut to Medicaid services.
The truth is that we're spending $200 billion more in Medicaid. And to your point, what was designed was to take us back to a peacetime. What Medicaid spent 50% more money over the last 5 years because of COVID. All the rules that were changed to accommodate the national emergency, our war on COVID, needed to be reversed. We're not at war anymore with the pandemic. You can't keep spending money the way you would during a pandemic. Let's provide the right incentives to go back to the way the system worked just 5 years ago. We didn't go back 25 years. The one difference, the one thing I feel passionately about is this country thrives because it works. When Medicaid was founded 60 years ago, it never crossed anyone's mind we would not ask able-bodied individuals to be on Medicaid or to work if they were on it. Every social network safety net program has work as part of it. President Clinton had that, Obama, Clinton, Biden, every Republican president. So we put a work requirement in to encourage people to get out of the house and get to work and live your life's destiny. That's what you're on this planet to do to change the world.
Dr. Oz, I appreciate you coming in. May the conversation continue.
God bless. Same.
Happy Thursday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever.